right, guys, welcome to another Leads to Deals podcast where we talk about everything from leads to deals and everything we talk about leads to deals. I'm here today with Michael Bartolomei. He's the head of strategy and solutions at one of the preferred platforms, one of the dominating platforms in the REI space to send out text messages to generate leads and deals over at Launch Control. Michael, thank you so much for coming on today, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. We were just chatting kind of pre-screen, and this is the power, I think, of the REI space, particularly those guys who understand it enough to potentially even be virtual. But I have a monster operation that I'm leading here from South America. You're actually in Central America right now, and we're going to talk about all things REI. So where exactly are you right now?
I'm in southern Mexico, a little town called Puerto Escondido.
And that's near the water, yeah?
Yeah, it's right on the water. I walked down the beach this morning with a coffee and watched the waves for a bit and then started my day. So not so bad.
Dude, I love that. How long have you been there?
Off and on since 2017.
Okay, very cool, man. Is it kind of like that's half your residence? You're living there half of the year now, or full time now?
Yeah, I'm a full resident. It's my home base, but I definitely embrace the work remote lifestyle and get around, see a few different places. Like I mentioned before we started recording, spent a couple of months in Colombia last year. So,
dude, yeah, I love it. I tell the story all the time. I came down here. I was struggling with lead generation, outsourcing it to other vendors. Like I had tried the Philippines, I had tried Egypt, and then I knew somebody that had some contacts here in Colombia, and I leveraged them. And I told my business partner in Orlando, Florida, I was like, dude, I'm gonna go down there for 4 months. It'll give me enough time to get it all set up. And now it's 4 months later, 200 employees, a house, 2 kids. It's like, man, dude, I really appreciate it because it almost reminds me of America I say this with love, endearment, almost like America in the 90s. You know, it's a little bit more slower paced, more family oriented. So do you kind of get those same slower paced vibes where you're at?
Yeah, it's a nice way to be able to separate from, the hustle of your job and really trying to, build a business, help others build a business.
Yes.
And then to be able to kind of step away into a space where everybody's out sitting on a outdoor patio having a meal or an afternoon drink. It's much more relaxed, and it's a good way to just kind of take a big life deep breath.
Awesome. Well, you have an open invite next time you're here in Colombia, man. I'd love to show you this operation that we got here on the other side of the studio, live and in person, man.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. It'd be amazing.
So, everything we talk about leads to deals. And so what I love is I'm a big sales focused guy. So a lot of times I'm on the deal side. So I think that's where a lot of times people in the REI space need a lot of help on is some sales strategy, sales acumen. But the reality is you can't even get to that if you haven't started on the lead side. So you have to have a preferred channel, a preferred vendor, just so I kind of have the heads up because I don't, right? Like I know that you come from a SaaS marketing background, you have a lot of marketing sales. I almost feel like you're almost like a great teacher by reading some of your technical history. And you would be the guy that is tasked with how do you calm down so many cowboys and give them technical advice? Because the industry that you offer your product in is filled with cowboys. They all just want to do it their way and this way. And they're wild, testosterone filled. And you got to come in and educate them and teach them. So how did you get linked up with Launch Control and then exactly what it is you currently do for them?
Yeah, I mean, the founder of Launch Control has a deep background in real estate investment. And his real passion was on the software side. And he saw an easy transition to take what he knew in real estate and really apply that at a very successful level via the software side, right? So that created the background of Launch. I came in largely in a sales and marketing role, but the first thing that I did, and this was at his prompting, he said, this business, you really have to understand this business, right?
Yes.
You can't just apply a blanket approach to sales and marketing to this. So the first thing that I did was I just took a really deep dive with all of our clients. And I was essentially interviewing clients, asking them about their business, helping them with content, helping them with messaging and scripting, yes. but really largely just doing a masterclass on real estate investment via the investors in our network, which because it's even at that time was growing really quickly. So I had this amazing access to people that were just getting started and basically saying, man, I know about as much as you do. Like I want to build something off of this. I see this as an exit from my W-2 and I want to make this work. And then on the other end, people that were making millions every year, running teams of 6-7 people, maybe off in Colombia and having their team run things from the States, so it was this big shift of like where people were starting and where they wanted to be. Right. And so I got to talk to the whole swath, and that really gave me a lot of insight into how businesses scale within the REI space.
And what year roughly was that when you first got in and you were like, okay, we're kind of like peers in the REI side, but you had this other technical background to bring into it? What year was that?
Yeah, 2019.
Okay, man. Your industry has really, really been going through some growing pains and growth curves and stuff because so many people got into it. I know that when I first got into it, one of the things that I realized right out of the gates was this is like a weirdly fragmented industry. And even though everybody goes to these masterminds and they all kind of like powwow with each other, when they all go back, it's all these like really small kind of like mom and pops. And so when I see these big guys, in almost every market, there's one disruptor. And then there's a lot of kind of like just guys starting out or 2 to 3 deals a month. But I noticed that there's a lot of order takers, for lack of a better way of putting it, than there are like marketers and then closers. And so it's like, hey, well, we can buy from other wholesalers to build our portfolio. We may send out some mail, but that becomes an opt-in lead just because the reason why they love it, it's a less resistant kind of channel. But then they miss out on all these other beautiful one-to-one conversations. And whether that one-to-one conversation happens to be a text or a phone call, they miss out on these other channels here. And so do you, from your perspective between 2019 and now, do you think there's a higher percentage of people doing SMS than there was then? Or how do you see it now? How much has that side changed on the dilution?
Well, I think that what we're seeing a slow change in a positive way is that in the beginning, it was very churn and burn, right? It was get the cheapest list you can find, match it with the cheapest skip trace service you can find, send out as many messages as you can. And if any desperation falls through, if anybody's like, yeah, I mean, can you help me out in the next 14 days? Because I need out, right? Unless that fell through, they didn't get acted on, right? So what you had was, if you're thinking of from a homeowner's perspective, you had a lot of people getting hit up with really similar messaging. Yes. and a lack of follow through. Unless they're clearly desperate and clearly in a situation where going off market was their only option, then they didn't get nurtured. They didn't have that one-on-one conversation based around solutions and alternatives. They had to come and say, I know I have no alternative help, right? And what we're seeing is a slower transition where people are realizing more and more, even at an earlier stage. In 2019, I worked with a handful of people that were at that upper stage that knew that the most powerful conversation that they had was one where they let people eliminate options themselves, right? When they let people, basically talk themselves into the fact that listing is just going to cost way too much to set up, and it's not going to be worth the stress of seeing if it pays off in the end. And they probably don't have the money for it anyway, right? Like creative financing isn't going to make sense for them to go down that path. They walk right into the off-market solution, and that person is ready there to capture that business, right? But that level of patience and that level of nurturing only existed at the top tier companies in 2019. And what I'm seeing more and more of is people understanding the power of nurturing earlier on, right? They're learning to engage earlier on, and I think that's a positive swing for the industry.
So for the people that aren't necessarily familiar with launch control, it's like you guys are the disruptors, you guys are the gold standard, and I've tried your competitors' platforms. Like I've literally before I found you guys, I tried every bulk mass messaging, non-transparent on deliverability rates, spinning number. I mean, literally, there's so much junk in the space because the space was known, as you said, which was, hey, just get the cheapest and do the cheapest and then see what happens. And then what you end up doing is you spend more money on that cheaper route, But I'm curious, when you saw this transition, is it now better because you guys providing some level of templates? In 2019, were you guys providing like, okay, here's the drip sequencing, and was all that built in back then?
Well, that was a big part of why I came on, was to be able to give some guidance on how to create scripting within a text marketing space, right? And we've developed that more and more. And we work through our CS team. We work very strongly with people on giving them that guidance on how to create the right multi-touch point messaging within the system. And we definitely have seen that pay off. There's that said, you've got probably 5,000 people using the system, and there's still a lot of common mistakes, right? So there are mistakes, like for instance with the drip automations. If somebody is not ready to sell in this month, right, the end of January, and it's a matter of timing, right? You've maybe even had a bit of a discovery call. You know that this is not a nut that's going to crack in the next 30 to 60 days, right? Instead of adding value points on a drip campaign, like, hey, here's a cost comparison I can give you, or here's some industry or some local market information that I can give you, and like offering value, it's 6 messages that say, how about cash now, right? So that goes back to that sort of 2019 mentality of not treating the homeowner as a potential client, but rather as like a data point that you hit until it either breaks or does not break, right? So it's that recipient first focus where you really think about providing solutions for a homeowner, and then how you can take that multi-touch point system and launch and deliver that value. That's what equals more deals, but higher return per deal, because you're able to really get to the solutions that make the most sense, and have more of a loyal, trusted based conversation with the homeowner. The end result is more deals and more profit from those deals.
Yeah. One of the prerequisites I have when I work with people in my other business is I talk to them just on their converted leads, not even like this, which is so important, which is to help generate the leads, to build those relationships. But it's amazing how many people out there in the REI space don't even have drip sequencing for people who have raised their hands and said, yes, I do want to sell. So there's so many guys out there that just don't understand the value in that. And I was thinking, I was speaking the other day, and we were talking about our time from lead to deal in our wholesale track, because I have a wholesale track in Orlando. And it is so extended because now, like you, I started in 2019. So we have deals that constantly convert from 3 or 4 years ago. And this REI space has so much more to grow. And when it comes to nurturing the leads, both pre-lead generation and then post-lead generation, and it's a big glaring omission. And I think it's kind of that Lamborghini mentality, like, I'm just going to pay some money and get a big check and then just move on. And then they never nurture what they've already spent money on.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's one of the things that we've really been pushing over the last year or so is I refer to it as a versus mentality, right? So in REI, it's a lot of like, well, what are my returns on SMS marketing? What are my returns on direct mail? What are my returns on cold calling? And the way that we try to get people to look at it is, in each one of those funnels, you've got homeowners on the other end. And the question is there a deal within that set of data within those homeowners? So as many of those homeowners, as many as deals as we can convert from those sets of data, the better. So we want to be able to use our marketing channels in conjunction to set up that nurture flow, right? So if you've got a direct mail campaign and people come to you, they're motivated. They read, which, let's be honest, what gets delivered as junk mail, and they read it and they responded to it, right? So that's great motivation, but you're not going to close out all of those, right? And they might be just in the research stage. They might not be ready to make a decision for 4 months, but you want to be able to keep their attention. So for everybody has these pools of what at least were motivated leads that have gone a little quiet. It's been 45 days since you've heard from them.
Yep.
We want you to put those back into launch, right? And we'll reactivate them through text, because people respond to text. It gets a quick reaction. And once they do, we can put them on a drip automation and a value-based drip automation. And when they're ready, you're going to be the solution. So your ROI is not just about what SMS delivered for ROI. It's about how SMS helped maximize your ROI across your marketing channels, right? And there is an inverse of this, right? So if you have certain people that didn't respond to you in SMS, that wasn't their first way in, you can put them into another marketing channel. And when they reply to you that way, then we can put them back into launch and we can get that text activated. But you're using your different marketing channels to make sure that you're never leaving any leads behind. They're always being nurtured, because if they ended up on your list and they showed any level of motivation, that's a winnable deal, right? And we just want to make sure that you're hitting the right touch points and nurture factors to win.
It's almost like the old farmhand, right? Like he would never waste anything. And so when you buy this data, you have the capacity to really maximize it three different ways. If you are going to cold call, you're going to get certain KPIs like, okay, here's the people who I've called more than 4 times on every number associated with them. They didn't answer there. Maybe that should go into the texting. Then anybody who no responds there, maybe that should go into mail. Or if it's cost prohibitive, definitely let's just launch on text. Anybody who doesn't respond on text can either go to CC or mail. But it allows you to synergize your efforts. And it's just like my dad used to say, it's like, where are we going to get the most juice for our squeeze? And so being able to, like you said, synergize these, I think is a really great point. Let's talk about how we can provide more value here. One of the things that you hit on, again, that's really, really important is taking these lead conversations and re-ingesting them back into your launch control platform. A perfect example, this industry is really good at doing drip sequencing on people they can't get on the phone. Okay, there was a lead. Hey, we've tried for 3 days. We tried for 7 days. Hey, are you still interested? But what this industry is terrible at is terminated lead dispositions and nurturing them. So terminated, they want retail. They're not interested right now. They said, I changed my mind. If we can get this industry to take those people and then also drip sequence them, that's where they're going to find the deals. Because if they were so interested enough to go through an entire pitch with you, but your price is wrong, keep on sending them messages. Because the way this market goes up is you might be able to make them the exact same cash price offer 18 months from now and have a bigger spread than you want, because now they're willing to accept that price. And so they just got to nurture these leads better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that a lot of times we go into this with a, unrecoverable pre-foreclosure mentality, right? Like everything has to close within a 30 to 60 day window, or it's done, it's gone, it's off the table. But in my experience, that is not the majority of the homeowners being contacted, right? The majority of the homeowners being contacted could be in a place where, in January, they entertain offers from 3 different investors. They look at those numbers and they go, I'm not ready, right? It's the person that stays in contact. It's the person that's still there that's going to win that deal in February, March, April, whenever it is that the homeowner has had time to marinate a bit and come around to that decision.
I'm going to say something controversial for you being my guest. I get a lot of people, they're like new and they're like, hey man, so what should I start out first, doing cold call or text messaging? And I'm a little conflicted by what they should start out doing. And I'll tell you why. Many times I defer to cold calling depending on the individual, and then sometimes SMS depending on the individual. I find that good, easy leads can make a strong salesperson weak, and or not give them the boot camp that they need to succeed later in life. And so what I find is text messaging is exactly what everybody says it is. It is a low resistance. It still works. You still got to use your brain. You still got to have healthy conversations. But the amount of brain damage that it takes compared to being on a phone all day is wildly different. And so sometimes I see these kids with absolutely no phone skills whatsoever. And I'm like, bro, you need to go spend 6 months cold calling before you start generating leads over here, because you got to get these marbles out of your mouth. You got to understand how to deliver value with your voice. And then I get over it and then take it into these other channels. So just curious, when you hear something like that, like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that with all the marketing channels for real estate investment, right? The only ones that are active are cold calling and text. Right? Like if you walk into work on a Monday and you're like, I need to have a few conversations today, those are the only 2 that are active, where every day of the week you can generate leads, right? Everything else, you're waiting for motivation to come to you, right? So, and for both of them, there is an art to it. you need training to cold call. I 100% agree. And I honestly think that text marketing is a bit more complicated than cold calling at the end of the day. Like, to get really, really good at it, I think it takes a little bit more, right? So just to come in and to, like, this is one of the things that drives me crazy, right? Is we've got a really great customer success team that works with thousands of investors across the country, and everybody has free access to them, right? Like, they can take you through text marketing guidance. It's not an upsell. Everyone gets a dedicated customer success manager, and about 70% of the people coming into the platform brush it off. That's crazy to me. Like, you've got a free training tool and you're just brushing it off, right? So I agree. Like, I think that everybody should be going through boot camp, and you should come out of that boot camp a lot more knowledgeable. And we have this in REI. There's a big reliance on mentors for a reason. It's a good thing. It works, right? So if you've got, in the cold calling space, in the text space, if you've got someone or a group of someones that you can go to and spitball ideas, brainstorm, like, would this work? What do you think? Why wouldn't you take advantage of that?
Couldn't agree more. I see a lot of people also, they'll get their first launch control account, because I'll meet them at different masterminds, and you guys are the buzz. Everybody talks about it. And they're like, hey, listen, I'm getting into the space. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get text messaging, and I'm going to hire this VA, and they're going to send this out. And I'm like, buddy, until you know how to do it, please do not hire somebody else who doesn't know how to do it, because how can you hold somebody accountable if you haven't been through the process? Let's get in there. Let's learn the platforms. Let's understand your KPIs. Let's get a couple of deals under your belt. Even if they wanted to pay me, I'd still want them to go through and do their own, whether it's cold call or whatever. I'd want them to go through and do it on their own, because then they know what the expectation should be. And then they'll value the actual leads or deals that they're getting from this other person so much more. So do you see that as well from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have, it's a joke, not joke, that we have internally, where if on occasion we get, the carriers will come back and say, hey, can you look into this campaign? It looks like there's some weird kind of volume coming out of this. And one of the first questions we ask is rogue VA, because it's often a VA that is, their investor gave them a number to hit, and that's all they care about, right? Yep. I did my job, I hit my number, and there's no care given to the homeowner. There's no nuance in any of the conversations. It's just go, 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 and sometimes repeat. And that is one of the biggest red flags for us is rogue VAs, right? And so we have solutions for that. We have a retooled program that we're launching right now called Launch Leads, where we do all of the texting for people, right? So all we do is we get the data in the beginning, we run a sophisticated text marketing system, but here's where we draw the line. And this is I think really important. We stop at discovery call. We tee up discovery calls for people, either a live handoff or we get the call scheduled. But we draw the line there. And the reason we do that is because we are the best at text marketing, especially text marketing in the real estate space, right? So we know how to either activate homeowners and get them onto a discovery call, or nurture them and get them onto a discovery call. Discovery call, I consider this as, like, in sales, it's one of the most frustrating things is when you talk to someone and you give your whole speech about, like, here's my business, here are my business pain points, here's what I want to solve. And the person on the other end goes, okay, great, I can't make a decision on that. Let me connect you with my boss. And you're like, I just gave you everything and you can't do anything, right? So it's like, I don't want someone on my team creating that frustration. Exactly. I want to hand it off to the decision maker, so the decision maker can take them down the path of what is their motivation? Let's go through some alternatives. Is this an edge case that I can make a little money off a real estate agent for? Or is this a true off-market deal? I got a buddy that can connect me with a hedge fund. Maybe that, like, no VA, I don't care if you give them 8 years of training, is ever going to be able to dissect a conversation at that level and make that level of decision. So I want to get it up to the point where the homeowner says, yes, I'm willing to discuss with your colleague, have a conversation. And then I want an REI expert to step in and take care of that conversation, right?
Yeah, I love that. When I came into the industry, again, about the same time, immediately identified that the bulk of this industry accepted what I called heartbeat in the home leads. They have a heartbeat, they have a home, send it to my closers. And then when I realized, because this is on cold call before I even stumbled into text, I was just like, man, I would never force my closers. Like, I need my closers doing revenue producing activities. I can't have them talking to those types of leads. And the exact example where you get to the end of the conversation, hey, this is Scott with Quick Cash Offer. I just received your. No, I was just like, maybe if you guys offered me the right price, I would sell. Well, shit, everybody would. I'd literally sell my house right now for the right price. I love my house. And so it's one of those types of things that I'm glad that you guys are offering that type of buffering system, because it's needed in there. And then when you have a VA who has no obligations, they're in another country, there's no exposure back to them, there's no nothing. They literally can abuse it and do whatever they want. And then who's left with those poor KPIs is obviously, the real estate investor that did it. Real quick, I just recorded a video on this. I get texts all the time because I'm an owner and I come up on Skip Trace on different properties in Florida. And the guy, he's sending me these text messages and I'm, oh yeah, I'm the hottest lead that you could imagine. Okay, great. My boss, can I talk to him right now? No, I can't. No, he's not available. He'll call you tomorrow. Boom, nobody calls. Of course, right? Then 4 days later, I'm like, gosh, I was the hottest lead that this guy's ever seen. The VA never sent it over. And then I called the phone number and it goes to a shut down Google voice number. It's like, sorry, this Google voice number is not accepting voicemails. And I'm like, man, this VA or this guy has just wasted a dream opportunity because they just didn't set up things correct. And so I'm sure you guys deal with that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many times, this is, like I said, like the versus mentality thing is, and one of the things that we really try to teach people is, like, when you send out a text message, I don't care if you're retargeting from your CRM, targeting leads that have actually come into your inbox or your website, because everybody now via the registration process has to have SMS data capture on their website, right? Yep. So one of the things one of the things I'd really like to push is people activating those, like actually using the website as an inbound lead portal, because those are opted in leads, right? That's not cold prospecting. Those are opted in, right? So whether you're activating your opted in leads, retargeting motivated leads from your CRM or pre-motivated leads from your CRM, or just doing cold outreach to filtered lists, in any case, when that person responds and they're in the inbox, at that point, it is now about sales conversion. Right? It's not about text marketing. It's not about cold calling. It's not about PPC or what. It is your team's ability to close out a sale and having the right strategies and the right systems in place to do that. Right? So if you've got a VA sending text messages back to a homeowner that clearly should be getting a call, right? Then that's a breakdown in the sales conversion system. Right? That's something that every investor needs to be looking at that and saying, stop here. This becomes a notification internally. Somebody needs to call. I don't want you going past this point, right? So that using these marketing channels in a way to just get to the point where you can run your real sales conversion strategies, like that's important to know where those exit points are.
Yeah, it's one of the things we take great pride in. Like in my organization who runs our text messaging, you have to graduate from the floor. So it's better, like our top of the top cold callers, those guys can graduate into SMS, because I know that when they pick up the phone, that's not just a cold lead, because they're picking up on the phone on somebody who's given some positive response, and now they're going to go through a little bit of a qualification system. That person is only talking to hot potential leads. They haven't converted yet. They haven't qualified yet. It's not going to go to my closer. But in our operation, it's the best of the best works the SMS, because I know how valuable those leads are. The closing ratio on leads to deals out of any channel, like PPC and SMS run neck and neck. And some months SMS or text blasting on converted leads is better than our PPC. And so it's like, we know our numbers very well. I'm a big believer in it, but I think what separates us, I don't know how many other people do it, but we're vigilant on, as soon as we get the first affirmative response via text, we call it ninja dial them. Like we get that response, we're boom, ninja dialing them and trying to pick them up on the phone. If not, then we'll carry with the next phase of the conversation there. But that gives us a market advantage because I know the phone's in their hand. They just responded. And so like, boom, let's get them on the phone and let's have that conversation. These guys who wait 2, 3, 4 hours, 1 day, 2 days later to respond, we had to open up on Saturdays to be able to have a staff that can respond on Saturday because we care that much about having a timely response on our text platforms.
Yeah, we do the same thing through Launch Leads. We have weekend staff to send and respond to messages because someone sitting around on a 10 a.m. on a Saturday is in a lot more relaxed mood than when they're driving home from work at 4:30 on an afternoon, right?
Yeah.
And I want to go back real quick because we're talking about, you said like kind of the cyclical nature of marketing, right? Anybody that does multi-channel marketing, five different marketing channels, yes, and they've been doing it for years, knows that there will be months where SMS is hot and months when it's down, months when Facebook is hot and months when it's down, months when cold calling is hot and months when it's down. And over the years, there's no predictability to it. It's up when it's up, it's down when it's down. And there's a bit of, I'm sure you've seen it, like the lemmings kind of thing, where like some guru on YouTube says that like, oh, what's really crushing it right now is PPC. And then 1,000 investors go, I'm dumping everything. I'm putting it all into PPC. And then PPC goes down. And then somebody goes, oh, I've really been crushing it on cold calling. Everybody goes over, right? And so there's this like herd mentality or lemming mentality of jumping back and forth. Whereas the people that are really successful, they pick their foundational marketing channels and they ride it out because there are times when it spikes and times when it doesn't, right? And going back to what I said about not having a versus mentality, people like, let's say you're combining your cold calling and text, right? And everybody that you got on the phone for cold calling over the course of the week or over the course of the day, even if you're following up with them by text and saying, hey, we spoke earlier. I wanted to give you an opportunity to have this channel as well. You can text me anytime, follow-up questions, or just a reminder, my name is Scott, by the way. Right? Yeah. Now you've got 2 communication channels open with that same homeowner, right? And it at the end of the day, does it matter if you closed the deal over a phone call or if it was text that got them to really bring it home? It doesn't. The point is that you got the deal, right? Like you got the ROI out of that opportunity, not ROI in terms of the marketing channels. Yes, that's there too. Sure. But I mean the ROI in terms of that lead converted to real money for your company. That's the end goal, obviously.
Yeah, and for guys and gals that are listening, I feel the experience in this conversation because what we're talking about is how many touches it actually takes. It's that old Tootsie Roll lollipop commercial. How many licks does it take to get to the center? Like it takes multiple touches. And one of the things I observed, and I feel like because I came in from an outside industry, it was just ingrained in my head. I understood multi-channels, if we can put the same record, and then we would do multi-touch attribution as well too, even depending on where it actually the deal came from. But all of those would have some type of value attributed to it. But when I came into this industry, I had a unique perspective because I would audit people's CRMs on the leads that we sent from my other business, the cold call business. Like, okay, so what about this lead October 12th of last year, and pull it up and like called the day we received the lead, called 2 days later, never contacted them again. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Like, send these people a text message for God's sake. They're like, well, I left a really nice message that said, if you're interested in selling, please call me back. I'm like, bro, you think who listens to their voicemails anymore anyways? Like, send these people a text message. And so to hear that coming from you, it's like, it means a lot. Because I never thought about like, hey, you know what? These guys who don't have texting, this is such a great systemized way. Import leads from your legacy leads, your other inbound channels, move them over to here and start your drip sequencing inside of Launch Control.
Absolutely. I see a lot of, I've run sales and marketing for bigger organizations, and I see a lot of similarities and in where the breakdowns are for real estate investors, especially as they're scaling up, is in any big sales and marketing organization, right? You realize the big sale and the person that the sales rep says, I did that. And then the BDR goes, well, I helped. Like I put that on your calendar. I had the first conversation. Yep. And then marketing goes, yeah, guys, like, you think we didn't do anything? Like the reason the lead came in was because of everything we did. And so like everybody wants to claim it, but the truth is it came from that coordinated effort between the three, right? And when there are breakdowns in that coordination, when a marketing team is off doing their thing and a sales team is off doing their thing, you end up with a lot of deals or leads or sales falling through the cracks, right? It's when those three groups are really, really in sync, and they know like that the acquisitions person knows exactly what's being said in the marketing channels, whatever they may be, text, PPC, whatever, right? The acquisitions, the person that is managing the text messaging or handling the sales calls knows what information the acquisitions person is going to need going in, so that they're able to give them a really good head start, right? And there's great communication between the two, so that the homeowner or the business owner or whatever, it doesn't feel like they're starting over at every stage, because that's frustrating. When you feel like you've given your information on an online form and then someone asks you the same information, and then you give a bit of discovery detail, and then you get to the fancy acquisitions person and they ask excuse my language, they ask the same shit. That's frustrating, right? So when there's great coordination at every stage, then the homeowner experience, the user experience, the client journey, whatever you want to call it, functions much better, works better for the end recipient, and has a higher return value for the company. I don't care if it's a real estate investment group or a Fortune 500 company. Those are all the same. That's just true across the board.
You're talking about synergizing between the two roles. One of the things I think is a delicate dance that every CEO and or business owner, REI business owner has is, first off, you should never get a lead from your launch control platform ingested into your CRM without the text string. And I just couldn't even imagine how many guys or gals are out there. They're on these text platforms. They're VA, they're junior acquisition guy, whoever's having these long, healthy conversations. They submit the lead over, and it's just a brand new raw lead, but none of those conversation details. So A, that's terrible, because then you get the customer on the phone. They're like, "What? Don't you guys communicate? I already answered all these questions." But then the second part, though, is that delicate dance becomes then your closers aren't there to prejudge. Just get the raw positive benefits out of there. Pick up the phone no matter what that text string says. You know, it's somebody who has a level of interest. And so, like, I get a lot of guys that they need the notes in there, but then sometimes you have these closers that are like, man, this closer's trying to find every which way to disqualify a lead. And so it's just a dance between read the notes, but don't let the notes talk you out of making an action.
Right, but do let the notes give you an ability to create a personal connection with the person. Like if you can go into a conversation and say, I understand you inherited this house for your uncle. I'm sorry to hear about your uncle, by the way. I do know the Florida market pretty well. Like that alone is enough to set the stage, right? So as opposed to going into that conversation, so why are you looking to sell? You know, and they're like,
No. They don't even say that. They ask them, so are you looking to sell? Like the worst, it's like not even why. It's like it's so terrible. You're 100% correct. So setting the stage, taking that information, ingesting it. I want to pivot before we end things, Mike. I want to talk about some of the technicalities, the rumors, the buzz, what's happening in the industry, because I would not have wanted to be in the launch control boardrooms a lot of Q4 of last year, just for the facts of it had to have been hectic. There was so much perceived, at least from the outside, changes coming in and restrictions and carriers, and this was going down and this was changing, this was modifying, and et cetera, et cetera. Can you set the stage first? What the 10 DLP, 10-2, what is that?
10 DLC.
10 DLC. Okay. ADP2 or some shit.
I want to first say that like the buzz volume on social media boards and all of that was like at a 9. The boardroom volume at launch was about a 3.2. It was much lower, and it's because we understand the larger scale text marketing industry. So like going back to 2019 and like the churn and burn kind of mentality, right?
Yeah.
What that set early on was a tone of like, we are getting away with something here and it's not going to last. And that mentality of we're getting away with something and it's not going to last has permeated, and people are always just kind of waiting for an entire marketing channel to get shut down. It's not going to happen. There are for like 28 billion messages sent daily across carriers internationally every single day, right? And so obviously there's some level of filtering, and obviously in a perfect world they would have nothing but 100% opt-in, and there's no level of prospecting whatsoever. But prospecting happens on some level across every industry, and so what they need to do is just filter out, just like you get in your email, right? Like if you ever look at like your spam folder in your email, it's nuts. It's so full of just, you're like, I did not know this stuff was coming in. Wow. Yeah. Right. So the carriers want to be able to provide the same service to their recipients. They don't want them getting hit up with, loan offers 4 times a day. Right. So they have to have filtering mechanisms in place to keep the stream of messaging coming in to be, let's say, semi-wanted. Right. They have to leave a gray area for the brands that they're working with, the companies that they're working with, to be able to run a certain level of prospecting. But they also have to filter out those that are kind of monstrously going after people and belong in the spam box, right? So what 10DLC was there an effort to do that. 10DLC, I think they did this on purpose to make it sound scary and regulatory. 10DLC means 10-digit long code. It's just describing a normal phone number. It means that you're sending somebody a message from a number that has an area code and 7 digits, 10, rather than a short code. That's it. That's it. There's no regulatory anything to do with 10DLC. It's just the carriers wanted to have additional control over what kind of messaging was going out from regular numbers to regular numbers. So the biggest myth is that 10DLC has something to do with federal TCPA regulations. It has nothing to do with federal TCPA regulations. Nada. That hasn't changed on a federal level since 2019. It has changed a little bit state to state. And that's where we monitor things, actually, is more like, do we have state regulations that are changing when we can text, like not being able to text on a Sunday, that kind of thing, right? But federally, TCPA has remained quiet. All of the 10DLC, again, a regular number to a regular number stuff, is all carrier based. So what they're doing, like when you give your EIN number and your company information, what they're doing is they're creating a business to business pipeline, right? So they're saying, we vetted your business, we're allowing your business to send messaging on our channel. And then they just expect you to stay within certain bounds, right? So like a lot of like the Q4 stuff, it wasn't about REI. It had nothing to do with REI. What it was about was they put into their giant billions of message system, they put in scam filters. And the scam filters that they put in were to keep people from phishing for personal information, right? Yep. So if I was like, hey, Scott, you're a Wells Fargo customer, right? I think last 4 digits of your card are 8654. Like, they don't want that, right? Like that's you're obviously going to scam somebody. So, hey, first name, you live at 57 Green Street, right? Got caught in that net because it looked like phishing for personal information. So what everybody had been doing for a couple of years of trying to be as personal as possible got caught in that net. And clearing that net out and resetting to normal, there's going to be a bit of a wash, right? And now we've reset, people are able to send the exact content that they were sending before, minus the first name inclusion, minus the property address, but are able to take a really direct approach. We're still working with people to improve strategy so that, we get better drip automations, better messaging within the system. Through launch leads, which I mentioned, we're running our very specific strategy, which is the safest box we know of, right? But it's stabilized. It was just that net got dragged not across REI. It got dragged across the billions, and REI got caught in the net.
My thoughts on it were, and I'm glad because you verified some of my suspicions, because I couldn't find anything that said it was regulatory. I kind of thought of it as like an HOA almost. Like, screw it. It's an HOA. It's like these guys, the carriers band together and are like, hey, we're going to set up this filtration system. And in my head, I was like, well, they probably are doing it so that way they can turn to the government and be like, hey, listen, we'll self-police ourselves so that way you guys never get involved in our kind of neck of the woods. And then they set up these filtration systems. But still, so much junk gets by at a high level. Like, I still get a bunch of messages. But just to reiterate for everybody, it's a non-regulatory body. It is the group of carriers who put together their own policies, if you will, and they're the ones who are controlling the traffic, and so they can choose to filter it out or not.
Right, and keep in mind, like when you use launch control, all we're doing is white gloving the registration for people. The carriers are looking at your website, they're looking at your messaging, and they're saying yes. Right, they're signing off on that B2B relationship, and they're doing this not just in REI, they're doing this across all the industries, right? Like it doesn't matter. Like if you are Microsoft and you want to send messages, you have to register. Like everybody has to do it, right? So when you think about it that way, it becomes not just hey, we're self-policing, don't worry about it. It also equals much more trackable profitability for them. They know exactly where the money's coming from. And we don't send messages for free at Launch Control. We get charged for every message that goes out. So they're making billions off of being able to have these individual B2B communications. And if they need to cut ties, it makes it easier for them to cut ties if they feel like something is problematic. But they're setting up a system where they can track, monitor, profit, and everybody can play. But it is a new system that's being rolled out across hundreds of industries and millions of senders. And so there have been over the last probably 18 months some moments of turbulence, but that turbulence should go down to a much lighter flow moving forward, right? The blips should go smaller and smaller as this all smooths out.
Yeah. Do you find certain carriers though treat the filtration system stronger than others? Like, is there you're like, hey, this one, without I guess naming names, I don't know if it matters, but like, man, this carrier is actually really tough to work with, but these guys are cool.
Yeah, they do have they each have different standards. They each have like different kind of filtering mechanisms. So that's part of like what goes into, it's part of what makes Launch work so well, is that we're always making tweaks to the algorithm and tweaks to the sending mechanism in order to kind of fit what's going to get delivered carrier by carrier, and we very, very closely analyze how traffic is working on each of the carriers so that we can adjust the entire ecosystem to work really well for people. So we get real nerdy about that on the back end. But yeah, to be fair, yes, they are separate businesses. Despite the HOA thing, they are separate businesses with separate personalities for sure.
Because we can see even on the cold calling side, because we're in such high volume, like we'll call certain states where a particular carrier is more prevalent in that state, like Ohio. There's a certain part of Ohio that's just like wildly different. And I think back to like cricket phones back in the days and, before everything was so consolidated. But are these pockets where there's a particular carrier that just had a better footprint throughout the 90s and 2000 in a particular region. And so they have more of those cellular assets there. And so it's got to be difficult on your guys' side because you're trying to draft text that will be able to get to everybody all at once when somebody having some different arranges. And so that's huge for these guys and gals who think they may want to set up their own solution or whatever. You're not doing revenue producing activities. You can just go to Launch Control. They've already maximized it to be able to deal with all the different carriers and all the different regions. So that way you can just focus on lead generation.
Yeah, and the truth is, you won't be able to set up your own situation. It'll get shut down. It's very, very difficult to configure anything that would be able to send a volume. Like what people can do is, if you're using a kind of a low end CRM, you can use an integrated SMS function there, but it's really just for managing a handful of clients. And that's what it's intended for is, I've got a client base of 100 people. I want to keep in communication every once in a while with those 100 clients. Like that's what it's meant for, but you're going to cap out at that, right? You're not going to be able to self-build something like Launch Control. It's quite a task.
Yeah, I can tell you in the 4 years, I've met a lot of young men and women who have accelerated their growth and or got their foot in the door successfully because of Launch Control. And so I've said this in a lot of different rooms. I'm very cautious on who I say and endorse and talk about, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a big believer in Launch Control. I watch it up close. We use it for our business. We use it for some of our affiliates businesses, but I watch people, and it is the most stable. I think it's the most honest reporting out there when it comes to deliverabilities. We saw the pivot that happened a little bit towards Q4. I am right back today. I checked with my team beforehand. I said, hey, listen, do you have hard-hitting questions? What do you have? I'm going to have the Launch Control guy on. They had some questions, but I said, what are our deliverabilities? I don't want to go in there. We're at the highest of high 90s in almost every single market right now. And so your deliverability is through the roof. And so I'm just a big believer in Launch Control, man. And so I was excited to have the opportunity to come in here and kind of talk to you about the business, et cetera, et cetera. Any last advice you'd want to give somebody in regards to starting out on Launch Control, or how to best follow up with you guys if they're looking to start out on Launch Control?
Yeah, absolutely. I just kind of playing off of what you just said, like since 2019, right? Like I've been able, it's one of the things that brings me a lot of happiness in this gig is I've seen people come in on our light package, just getting started in real estate investment, work with our team, ask a bunch of questions, and now they're on pro or enterprise accounts. Some of them are getting in the influencer space. Some of them are bridging into coaching, and they've just gone all the way up, right? And I love seeing that progression, and see them going from just launching a bit of cold calling to they're running 5 different marketing channels, and they got big teams, and it's inspiring to see kind of what they've done, right? So with that in mind, like anybody coming in, no matter what stage you're at, you're going to go to launchcontrol.us, walk through things with our sales team, but really work with the CS team, the customer success team, because what they're going to do, it's part of our customer journey mapping, is when somebody comes in, we want to find out like where they are. Like, do we want to put them on a training course that is they're going to be the person running the system, and they're going to need to have one-on-one text marketing engagement training, because we'll give them that. If it's somebody that's coming to us that was, using another service or never got into text, but they're running a big organization, we're going to say to the owner, like, take a step back. We've got this. Who on your team is going to run it? We'll make sure that they're trained up, and we'll focus on the person that's going to be active in the app, focus on getting them trained up. And then, for somebody that isn't like the owner of a bigger operation, there's lots of connections within our network. There's opportunities to join our mastermind. So it really becomes, you're joining not just a text platform, but you're joining a community and a learning engagement space where you can get, not just better at REI, but really get some intensive kind of text marketing training that I think is invaluable.
Yeah, and for these guys and gals, that should be a charged for service. Like the value that he just said that's included, that's essentially your own coach, your own guru. They're going to show you how to maximize it. They're going to be able to be there to answer your questions when you call in with them. We've used your client success manager. I feel like we're on the phone with them a couple of times a week, or texting just as we're deploying this and adding on this. Like, you have an exceptional customer service group out there. And so you've built a brand. I'm proud to be a user of your guys' brand out there. I think it's one of the best, well, it's for sure the best text messaging product in the REI space that is available. So launchcontrol.us. Mike, I appreciate you coming on here and just talking about your guys' platform. I wish you the best of luck in your guys' journey for 2024 and beyond, and hope we're able to send some guys and gals your way.
All right. I love it. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it, brother.